A lot has been put on hold over the past 4 to 5 months, but sports are finally starting to return. Golf, NASCAR, basketball, women's soccer, and baseball here soon. Weather, of course, impacts sporting events from the wind, rain, heat, cold, and how it impacts those field conditions. And here are some of those extremes. Now, basketball, obviously inside and typically not affected by the weather. But in 1994, fans at the San Antonio SPURS vs. Golden State Warriors game found themselves in the middle of an indoor downpour. The Alamodome's fire system went off after the pregame fireworks show triggered a water cannon. This only lasted for 4 minutes, but it left fans soaking wet and delayed the game for 50 minutes. Another soaking, and I'm sure Panthers fans back here at home remember this one, the 2011 Monsoon Bowl. Down in Charlotte, the Panthers were taking on the Jacksonville Jaguars when the skies suddenly opened up just before halftime. Shortly after, they were standing in ankle-deep water. There were even waterfalls in the stands from the upper levels to the lower ones. The downpours finally let up in the third quarter, and the Panthers managed to stay afloat and get the win. From rain to fog. During the 1988 Philadelphia Eagles and Chicago Bears game, dense fog reduced visibility down to only about 10 to 15 yards. Players and officials couldn't even see first down markers, and commentators were unable to see from the press box. Play did continue, and the Bears won what became known as the Fog Bowl. Continuing with our bowl games, the Ice Bowl, the 1967 NFL Championship between the Green Bay Packers and Dallas Cowboys, was and remains the coldest game in NFL history. At Lambeau Field, the temperature dropped to negative 15 degrees, with a wind chill of negative 48. As far as the coldest game in terms of wind chill factor, that is known as the Freezer Bowl, and that was the 1981 AFC Championship game between the San Diego Chargers and Cincinnati Bengals. In Cincinnati, the game time temperature was negative 9 degrees, but it felt like negative 59. The Chargers quarterback had icicles from his beard, and multiple players got frostbite. Back to Lambeau Field again, but this time for the Snow Bowl. On December 1st, 1985, there was already a foot of snow at noon kickoff, and by the end of the game, a total of 16 inches. Almost 20,000 fans braved one of the worst winter storms to see the Packers and Buccaneers battle it out. Now to a different kind of football. The 2013 Snow CLASICO at Dick's Sporting Goods Park in Colorado. A March blizzard brought whiteout conditions during the 2013 World Cup qualifier between Team USA and Costa Rica. A yellow and purple ball was needed so that players could see it, and crews had to shovel the field to keep the lines visible. A year later, at the 2014 World Cup, very different conditions in Brazil. During the USA and Portugal game, it was 84 degrees with 80% humidity. This resulted in the first official World Cup water break. Later in the tournament, officials also called the first ever 3-minute cooling break during the Mexico vs. Netherlands match. Similar conditions also happened to the women's teams during the 2019 Women's World Cup. In France, temperatures reached record highs, leading to water breaks in each half. But don't worry, that did not stop our women's team from winning it all and getting the gold. The heat and humidity were issues in the last matchups, but in baseball, it actually helps the ball to travel farther. The molecular composition of a unit of air is lighter when it's humid than when it's dry, and hot air is also lighter than cool air. This means that a baseball travels most effectively on a hot and humid afternoon. Speaking of the heat and humidity, in Arlington, Texas, the Texas Rangers set the major league record for the hottest game time start in 1980. At first pitch, it was 109 degrees. They then tied that in 1988 while playing against the Toronto Blue Jays. A year later in San Francisco, a magnitude 6.9 earthquake struck the city right before Game 3 of the 1989 World Series. Players, coaches, and more than 60,000 fans felt the tremors at Candlestick Park. Thankfully, there was minimal damage, but the game was postponed for 10 days. Nearly 20 years later, Game 5 of the 2008 World Series between the Phillies and Tampa Bay Rays was the first time a World Series game was suspended due to weather. Before the game in Philadelphia, it started as a drizzle, but turned into downpours by the 5th inning. Numerous puddles in the base paths and whipping winds forced the game to be halted in the middle of the 6th inning. Play resumed 2 days later, with the Phillies winning the series. Unfortunately, due to COVID-19, the Olympic Games this year are postponed for the first time in history. The 2020 Summer Olympics will now take place in July 2021 in Tokyo. But during the 1996 Summer Olympics in Atlanta, the Georgia humid heat soared to 100 degrees. This became very costly, as Atlanta installed high-powered water mist fans and spent $1 million alone to protect horses during equestrian events. They also cooled down the turf fields with water, which then just turned to steam. Switching to the Winter Games, the 1980 Winter Olympics in Lake Placid, New York is known for two things. First, and probably best known for, the Miracle on Ice, the gold-winning performance by the U.S. men's hockey team. But it also became the first time for using artificial snow in Olympic competition. Their winter season was extremely mild and generally snowless, so this large production of man-made snow allowed the ski competitions to go on. Decades later, during the 2014 Sochi Games, some ski competitions did not go on. Ski jump events were canceled after puddles formed and athletes were slipping and falling in the landing area. Sochi, Russia was the warmest Winter Olympics with a high temperature of 68 degrees, and not a single moment of the games were below freezing. Officials had to recover the courses with 80% man-made snow, and athletes rethink their wardrobes. On the opposite side, the 2018 Winter Olympics had sub-zero temperatures with winds upwards of 40 miles per hour. This postponed several downhill ski, slalom, and snowboard events. Athletes were not able to maintain control during their jumps as they were being thrown by the wind up to 20 feet off the ground, causing dangerous falls and crashes. Hopefully, we will be able to cheer and watch the Olympic Games next year with nice and cooperating weather. For your 7-day forecast, we continue with those scattered storms and warm temperatures. Then for the weekend, back to the hot and humid side. Stay safe, healthy, and see you for next Weather Wednesday.